Hi everyone, this is my cat Kiki. She is my best friend in the entire world, and I thought since we were going through so many sad parts in our book that we would see a very cute kitty. Oh, hello, hello. Hopefully you like her as well. I love her. She is my absolute best friend. And I am going to put her down now so I can read chapter 29 to you, Locked in the Smokehouse. Okay, so before we start this chapter, I'm just going to remind you really quick of Cato. If you forgot who Cato was, he is the oldest slave on the plantation. He's kind of a funny guy. He's got like one tooth, little spots of gray hair all over his head. And he kind of gets away with not doing very much because they basically worked him dry, as he says. But the thing I like about Cato is he's a lot like Teeny. He's like the male version of Teeny, because he knows a lot of the goings-on of the plantation. He hears a lot. He sees a lot. Things like that. So he's kind of a wealth of knowledge in a way. All right, so chapter 29, Locked in the Smokehouse. Sorry. Oh, Lord, what we gonna do? Teeny moaned miserably. She sat on the dirt floor, holding Tidbit close to her. He be my onlyest child, my baby boy, she whispered into his hair. My baby boy. Polly could hear Tidbit whimpering. What's the matter, Mama? She knew that he couldn't possibly comprehend the enormity of what was about to happen to him. Is there any way out of here? Polly looked around, but the smokehouse was so dark that she could distinguish only the shadowy figures of a couple of hams hanging from the hooks. No, child. The smokehouse was built secure so that nobody can come in here and get free meat. Ain't but 2 keys. Massa got one, and Miss Isabel got the other. Teeny continued to rock Tidbit on her lap. Amari, who sat on the floor near the door, suddenly asked, Slaves ever run off? Sure they runs off. Any chance they get, Teeny replied. But mostly they gets brought back. They got dogs that can smell a person in the woods and folks whose job it is just to catch runaways and bring 'em back. Has anybody ever succeeded? Polly asked. Well, yes, child, as far as I know. I mean, they might have got killed on their journey, but they never came back here, so in my mind, they got to the north safely. What is north? Amari wanted to know. Well, north is where freedom lives, child. They got slaves there too, but I've heard tell of black folk living up there north with jobs they gets paid for and houses that belong to them and don't everybody own them at all. Well, so why don't more slaves run away? Polly asked. Well, it's hide to hard when your skin is black and everybody else got white skin, Teeny explained. Now you, child, you could run off and fit right in. You could leave Mina and my Tidbit here, and you could have a chance to be free. Well, I'd never leave them, Polly blurted out before she could even think about it. Yet once she said it, she knew it was true. Huh, easy to say when you're all locked up, Teeny commented quietly. Well, do they chase runaway indentured servants as well? Polly asked her. Well, a couple years back, Massa had a denture boy who run off. Massa brung him back after a few days, and he put an iron collar around the boy's neck so folks would know that he was a runaway and not to be free on the roads. Now, I'm going to upload a picture of an iron collar into the Google Drive so you guys can see it. I'll also show you guys in class. It's actually quite a gruesome invention. Basically, it's a collar made of iron, and they're very, very heavy, and it cannot be broken. It's welded on, and some of the more extreme ones had even like large bars coming out from them to make them even more awkward, just to make the life of the slave and or the indentured even worse. It was a very cruel invention. Now, something to note in this moment, a couple important items. First off, there are 2 keys to the smokehouse, which is really cool. We just figured that out. It's Mr. Derby and Mrs. Derby. So maybe a little bit of hope, we're not sure. Secondly, Polly just said, I would never leave Amari and Tidbit. You know, Teeny made it very clear to her having white skin, she could run away and get away with it. She could pass. She's blonde hair, blue eyes. She could probably find a guy, marry him, whatever. She could get away. She chooses not to run away. She has formulated a real relationship with Tidbit and Amari, and the thought of leaving them behind breaks her heart. That's really cool. She has seen several examples now of this. She's kind of really brought a friendship with this, and she saw an example of a white woman falling in love, real love, with a black man. So she knows now, she can see it now. Hey, this is actually, these are really cool. These are people, I can love them. I'm allowed to love them. Even though she was brought up by her parents not to, she is finally allowing herself to love people with dark skin and to view them as humans, real humans. Well, where is the boy now? Amari asked quietly, touching her neck, which still had the scars from her own iron chains. Oh, he drowned that summer. I believe he let that iron collar take him down, Teeny told her. North, Polly mused. We could all be free. She wondered what freedom would mean to Amari, who could never get back what she had already lost. Shh! What's that noise? Amari suddenly whispered, and they all heard it, a faint scratching on the wall of the smokehouse. They moved quietly to the back of the small room. They heard the scratching again, and then Cato's whispered voice. Y'all all right? Polly smiled as she heard him clear his throat and cough. If they catch you here, they'll kill you for sure, Teeny whispered to Cato. If they kill me, at least I'd be free at last. I ain't worried about it. Cato laughed quietly, and then his voice got serious. Teeny, you got to let that boy go with them pretty little gals. Your boy gonna get a chance to be free. How you figure? Teeny asked, skepticism in her voice. Doc Hoskins don't believe in no slavery. How'd you know this? Teeny asked suspiciously. How many times I got to tell you I just know stuff? Listen, Doc Hoskins, he ain't got it in him to sell nobody. But Clay's going with us, Polly exclaimed. I think it would give him pleasure to see us sold. Remember, the doctor couldn't drive back that night. This is still the same night. The baby and Noah have just been killed, maybe an hour and a half before this moment right now in the chapter. Dr. Hoskins couldn't drive back because it was a 4-hour drive and he wouldn't. The next day, of course, is market day, but Clay's going with them, so they have an issue to deal with. Teeny shifted her weight and handed Tidbit to Amari. Hold him for a hot minute, Chow. I got an idea. To Cato, she whispered. Go to my kitchen. Look out back under that big rock by the persimmon tree. You'll find a rag with a passel of seeds in it. Put just 2 seeds in Massa Clay's midnight wine. She was silent a moment. Maybe 3. Polly heard Cato grunt. I hears you. You just leave Clay up to old Cato. Last I heard, he was down in the quarters beating the sweet Jesus out of Sarah Jane. I best hurry if I'm going to fix him his usual bedtime glass of wine. Get the boy ready, Teeny, he told her. Well, I ain't parting with my baby, Teeny said emphatically. You wants that boy to be a slave like you? You wants to see him be gator bait again? Teeny groaned. Polly could almost touch the anguish in her voice. I wants a better life for him, that's for sure. Well, you gotta trust these gals, and you gotta trust the good Lord, and trust the spirits of hope, Cato said philosophically, still whispering through the wall. You got to let him go. You got to give that boy a chance to be free. So in this moment where he says, trust the girls, trust the Lord, and trust the spirits, this is kind of a combination, of course, the girls being Polly and Amari. The Lord, of course, the Christian faith. This is the faith that they have been exposed to since they've come to the United States. This was mostly the faith of the time and is actually still today mostly the faith. Christianity overall is the most practiced faith here in the United States. The Lord, the Holy Bible, things like that. But the spirits would be the African religion. This is the same religion, the ancestors, things like that, that Afi and Amari were talking about in the beginning of the book. So Cato is kind of putting both of those religions in there together, the traditional African religion and the American religion. And although Teeny wouldn't know necessarily about the African religion, she said that her mother, who is from Africa, told her several things about Africa. So there's a good chance that she would have learned that religion from her mother, just like when she got that Kent cloth from her mother. And her mother, of course, got that Kent cloth from her grandmother's head wrap. Teeny's grandmother. Cato, Teeny called out in a strained voice. "Well, I be here," Cato replied. "Be real careful with them seeds. I'm gonna need a big pile of 'em soon. Yes, sir. Massa Derby gonna have himself a right good meal pretty soon. I got a mind to fix him a stew he ain't ever gonna forget. And he ain't ever gonna remember." Polly wasn't exactly sure what she meant, but Cato whispered in reply, "I hears you." Teeny took the sleeping child from Amari and held him closely. Polly still could not see how leaving with the doctor in the morning and heading to the slave market would lead to any chance for their freedom. Amari asked through the wall, "Where be North, Cato? Where is free?" Cato answered clearly, "Do not go north. That's where's they be looking for you." "Well, that makes no sense," Polly interjected. "What do you mean, don't go north? If we go south, we get deeper and deeper into slave territory. Our only chance for freedom must be north." Surely he could see that. Cato repeated, "Do not go north. Tracker dogs searching the roads heading north. Runaway papers be posted in the north." He coughed again. "Well, where we go?" Amari asked. "Head south. Find a place called Fort Mose. It be Spanish Florida. I hear tell it be a place of golden streets and fine wine. Spaniard folk run it, and any slave who get there be set free." "Dentured gals, too?" Amari asked. "The ways I hears it, the folks at Fort Mose got open arms to slaves, dentured folks, even Injuns," Cato told them. An Injun, in this case, is a Native American. There were several different countries fighting with the Native Americans at this time, including the colonies, the United States, which was British ruled. If you remember the French and Indian War, the 1800s, so the French too, which were further north. And it's interesting though, when you read this, who asks about indentured girls? Amari. So just like Polly has grown a very tight friendship, loving friendship with Amari, Amari is actually worried about Polly too. And if you remember, Amari was quite racist. We can understand in her case, of course. But Amari was quite racist towards Polly in the beginning because she thought that all white people were evil. And now she realizes, okay, there can be some good white people. She has seen that example with Miss Isabel and Polly now. And Polly has said, okay, just because you have darker skin doesn't make you a bad person, or a non-person for that matter. So they're both gaining a lot of knowledge and feelings through this experience, which is really cool. "It sounds too good to be true," Polly commented. "Ain't nothing gooder than freedom," Cato replied, almost too softly to be heard. "Much danger?" Amari asked. "Oh, yes, child. Much danger. Swamps and alligators and bears and bugs to start, plus not knowing how to get there, plus the fear, plus it be a long, hard trip." "How we not get lost?" Amari asked, her voice trembling. "Follow the river south, and then leave it. All rivers run south to the sea, and you must travel by land. Stay way inland from the ocean, else you have too many rivers to cross. That's all I knows to tell you. And when you find them streets of gold, think of old Cato." His footsteps and his cough disappeared into the night. Polly leaned against the wall, trying to think. None of this makes any sense. Try to escape by running south? Rivers, bears, swamps? Impossible. She wished desperately that she could think of her mother for advice, or just curl up in her arms and not have to worry about difficult decisions. She sat on the dirt floor of the smokehouse, surrounded by the dried carcasses of 2 pigs, a cow, and a deer, feeling scared and powerless. She glanced at Amari, a girl who, just a few months ago, had seemed dirty and disgusting. Now they were caught up together in a situation that was so awful that she had to grab her head to erase the bloody images from her mind. Mr. Derby murdered a baby and an innocent man. What kind of man could do such a thing? Polly watched as Amari, wrapped in her own private thoughts, finally slept. Teeny cradled her son, whispering to him, singing to him, telling him stories. She heard Teeny murmur over and over, "Long as you remember, child, ain't nothing ever really gone." Polly thought with compassion of Teeny's sorrow and the anguish Mrs. Derby must be enduring right now. It was enough to drive someone crazy. She wondered what morning would bring. So now Teeny's sort of preparing for the journey. She said earlier in the text that her mom passed down information of Africa, what little information that she had, and Teeny has always sort of replayed that information in her mind, because as long as you remember, you won't forget. It is her motto, her way of living. But Tidbit, only being 3 or 4 years old, Teeny hasn't really had the time to tell Tidbit about Africa, or about the stories that her mom told her about their grandmother, about their culture, about everything. So she's trying desperately into this night to prepare for Tidbit leaving. She's trying so desperately to get all this information about Africa out, about their culture, about their home, because it's important that they pass it on, because they don't know what the future will bring. If every person from Africa is plucked away and taken as a slave, their culture will die completely, and that will just be a terrible, sad thing. She's got to pass this on so that her mother's stories that she spent so long telling her mother won't have died in vain, or be sold, because she was sold. She was sold because she was too pretty, basically, which is really sad. But anyways, so they're preparing potentially for the journey. They have no idea what to do. Everything that they've ever heard ever was to go north, because that's where people are free. But Cato is telling them, no, everyone will think that you're going north, so now you have to go south. And now they have no idea what to do. Now, history will tell us Spanish Florida is a real thing. Fort Mose is a real thing. But history will also tell us that Spain didn't own Florida forever. So without cheating and looking forward in history, these girls still don't know. And we, the reader, unless we know it by heart, we don't know either. Is this a time that Spain still owns Florida? Or is it not? Have the colonies taken over? Or is this true? Does Spain really welcome everybody? Spanish Florida. Does Fort Mose really welcome everybody, or do they turn people away? We don't know. And of course, Cato, our voice of reason, tells us one thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to listen.